Hi, my name is Madison Thomas, and I'm here with Richard Ulin, and today we're going to be debating over hydraulic fracking. Merriam-Webster's definition of hydraulic fracturing is the process of injecting liquid at a high pressure into subterranean rock, boreholes, or anything else to that effect, so as to force open existing fissures and extract oil or gas. The most well-known targets of hydraulic fracturing are tight formations such as tight sands, coal beds, and shale formations. Done in 21 states, most commonly in central, midwestern, and eastern northeastern states in the U.S. Personally, I am against fracking because of the environmental risks that it brings. Many claim that those who are against fracking tend to blow these risks out of proportion, but reality is that regardless of how certain or definite the dangers are, they are dangers still. And with how progressed our country is, we should be concerning ourselves with developing methods of harvesting energy that do as little damage to our environment as possible, instead of settling for whatever is cheapest or easiest. The first real environmental cause for concern is the increase in various sizes of earthquakes in central states as compared to other states that have usual earthquake activity. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, from 2008 to 2013, we jumped to an average of 99 earthquakes per year in central and eastern United States with a magnitude of 3 or higher, and the rate is increasing as time goes on. In 2014, there were 659 magnitude 3 or higher earthquakes. One larger one was magnitude 5.3 in Prague, Oklahoma, and another one was magnitude 5.3 in Trinidad, Colorado. Both of these had reports of substantial damage. In total, Oklahoma experienced 585 earthquakes of a magnitude of 3 or greater in 2014. Even though those are not necessarily strong enough to be felt, that's more than 3 times as many as the 180 which hit California last year, which is definitely a rise for concern. These earthquakes occur because water from the targeted natural structure comes to the surface with the oil and is too saline to be released back into the environment. This water is disposed of by injecting it deep into formations meant to hold this form of waste, and is currently the most common method of disposal. Injecting large volumes of water deeply into the sedentary formations raises the pore pressure over large areas and can induce earthquakes. In some cases, though, produced water, also known as flowback, can be treated and reused to fracture another well. There are companies that operate water treatment facilities, and they have the ability to remove contaminants from this fluid so that it can be reused. Otherwise, the water can be clean enough to meet health standards and is sent back into local watersheds. Another way that fracking can potentially hurt the earth is water pollution brought on by irregular and unpredictable cracks made during the process. When the water and sand is blasted into fractures, which are the targeted areas that are where you're trying to get oil out of, it's impossible to 100% predict how large it will become. If the crack goes too high, breaking the seal that keeps the oil down and controlled, which is essentially a thick layer of rock between the targeted area and the water table, it could accidentally impede into water tables, causing pollution. Pennsylvania has reported 106 water contamination cases since 2005. Ohio had 190 complaints and 20 cases that were confirmed or under serious investigation since 2010. West Virginia experienced 122 complaints, 4 being to the point where drill sites had to take corrective action, and Texas submitted over 2,000 complaints, 62 of which being confirmed contamination. A third negative aspect of hydraulic fracturing is a decrease in interest and research for alternative energies due to how cheap natural gas is to produce. Fracking is one of the biggest developments in energy over the last decade. Researchers say that it has helped the U.S. economic recovery by lowering energy costs. Supporters of shale gas also claim that renewables are unreliable. Regardless of weather conditions or time of day, drills can continue working nonstop. This seems like an attractive avenue for energy to many for these reasons exactly. So basically, fracking is so much cheaper and reliable than other alternative energies like solar panels or turbines that the government is reluctant to fund the progression of these other energies. Analysis by the U.S. Energy Information Administration shows that the production of gas extracted by fracking has risen tenfold in the U.S. since 2007. This may seem like a positive for our country right now in a fiscal sense, but we are failing to see the big picture and long-term effects it can have on our environment as a whole.
The first thing I'd like to point out is that because of fracking in the U.S., natural gas prices have dropped 47% in just a few years since 2013. Gas bills have decreased about $13 billion from 2007 to 2013. That adds up to about $200 per year for households using gas. Almost every type of energy consumer last year, for example, industrial, commercial, and electric power consumers, were able to gain about $75 billion per year from the increase in fracking. Some will make the argument that not everyone will make that $200 back from fracking, but even in states like Texas, people often save about $430 per year. And the area that gains the least is still gaining at least $180 per year in benefits. There are other benefits that come with fracking as well, like the benefits of natural gas. So when coal is replaced by natural gas as a fuel to create electricity, there are far less carbon dioxide emissions than if we used coal. And to add on to that, almost none of the amount of mercury, ash, or sulfur coal produces when burned. Fracking requires a substantial amount more of water than your traditional gas drilling would. However, using natural gas rather than coal or nuclear fuel to generate power actually saves a lot more water. The process of mining coal and using it to generate power consumes over 2 times the water per megawatt hour generated than gas does. Those aren't even the only benefits coming from fracking. The unconventional energy that is generated from hydraulic fracturing brings in income, and if it's done right, it can reduce air pollution in the country and even reduce water when compared with other leading fossil fuels. Coal uses about twice as much water as stated before, but that's just the tip of that spear. Almost 10 times the amount of water for the energy generated is done in oil extractions, and nuclear energy uses 3 times as much water as fracking does. Another popular fuel is corn ethanol, which is what you're talking about with saving water. It's horrible for us. If the plants are irrigated, it could potentially use around 1,000 times more water than fracking does. And seismic activity brought around by fracking is more rare than what most people will say. And earthquakes that can actually be felt by humans are even more rare than that. Only a few real cases of earthquakes have actually been documented. None of them are greater than 4 on the moment magnitude scale, or some will call the Richter scale. And that's not very high. Most of the time this occurs in places with existing fractures, making the earth less stable in that area. And these spots are purposely aimed for because it yields more gas production most of the time. Keep in mind that you won't see an oil fracking operation in your backyard because these things aren't done in the middle of cities. They're done most of the time in deserts or places that don't have a high population. And there are countless political benefits to fracking too. The International Energy Agency of the U.S. expects our country to surpass Saudi Arabia in oil production possibly even before 2020. That's not only good for us being independent, but the regimes popping up all over the place in those countries will also be slowed down due to us not supporting them as much. So international relations also benefit from fracking. The jobs required to operate the rigs aren't the only one that we get from fracking. Energy companies that produce chemicals and fertilizers utilize gas, and the cheaper the better. Dow Chemical is spending $4 billion to open new factories in the U.S. Working in one of these factories may not be the most fun job in the world for anyone, but they're good enough to support a family, which makes them a great thing to have tens of thousands of all over the country. It's my opinion that hydraulic fracking of natural gas is a good method for extracting fossil fuels from Earth. One overlooked benefit of our country doing this is that we don't have to depend on unstable countries as much as we did before, and it's created a significant amount of jobs too. It's a good transitional step for us while we wait clean, renewable energy with zero risks. The risks for fracking are often made to sound much worse than they are. The truth is that no one method really comes without flaws when it comes to fuel, and hydraulic fracking doesn't have enough negatives outweighing its positive that make it a bad choice.
Well, my response to some of your comments would be that yes, natural gas prices are dropping due to fracking, which is great for our economy, but you said that natural gas, because it can replace coal for energy, it helps keep the air clean. This may be somewhat true, but it does concern the harvest of natural gas as a whole, not just fracking. But when we speak about natural gas as a whole, it still pollutes the air with methane because of on-site flares during the harvesting of the oil. Natural gas also, well, you said that it uses less water during production than coal. Again, this is somewhat true for natural gas in general, but not fracking itself. Fracking uses a ton of water. That's mainly what the process is, and also has a hand in polluting it, as I stated earlier with my points. Another point that you brought about is that earthquakes are not strong or common enough to be a concern, and none have exceeded a magnitude of 4, which is false. As I pointed out earlier, there was a 5.3 magnitude in Trinidad, Colorado, and a 5.6 magnitude earthquake in Prague, Oklahoma, as proven by the U.S. Geological Survey. We can't shrug off the fact that these earthquakes are happening only because they are not always felt. We need to be concerned that they are happening, period. Anything that can induce an earthquake, regardless of how strong it may seem, is an issue, especially whenever we are partly responsible for it.
Now, mention were a couple earthquakes within the country. Now, those are clearly a bad thing, but ask how they are so bad. Most of the earthquakes weren't within civilization, and the ones that were didn't cause so much damage that was very significant. The number of quakes has constantly been going down due to new countermeasures and technological innovation. These things don't happen often enough to make fracking a bad choice. After all, if you look at how much we used to pay for oil, we essentially funded terrorism in the Middle East with how much we were supporting the current regime. Another thing he argued was water usage. I've already explained my side of the amount being used, but I don't know if you made a note of how water isn't useful once it's been used for fracking. However, it's been shown that water has actually been used across the country for cleaning streets and even airport runways, which is actually a very necessary thing to keep construction costs down across the country. So a lot of it can actually be recycled very efficiently. Another way it's been used is with pesticides. So some of the water that's meant to be mixed with chemicals actually interacts very well in agriculture, if done correctly. Other water that's too far contaminated to be used is safely injected back into the earth, which some people say is dangerous. However, in spots that have been fractured before, it actually helps to stabilize the earth in that area. I'd say it's a better outcome to have a geyser and a small earthquake here and there than to see a nuclear reactor melt down and contaminate an entire city. Until renewable energies don't rely on the sun to be shining down or the wind to be blowing, or even for enough of it to be saved up at a time, fracking is the lesser of several evils when it comes to non-renewable energy. Fracking is actually only getting better at this point. People acknowledge the faults it has and work tirelessly to make them better or gone entirely. We've come a long way with the water issue, and while we've made things safer, we've made them cheaper at the same time. There's constantly more pros and cons, and the cons are diminishing faster than ever.
Thank you. And for closing comments, we need to start asking, what can we do to improve our methods of energy instead of pointing our fingers and continuing this contest of which method is worse. The effects of fracking may not be indefinite or overwhelmingly common, but they are indeed real and present, and if we do not take steps to advance past fracking, then the effects have the chance of worsening. We cannot simply pay for a new, healthy environment. We only have one chance to take care of our Earth, and if we let the idea of saving a few dollars lead our decisions, it will directly impact the lives of all varieties of living beings, not just humans.
I'd say that was pretty good. I mean,